In one of our previous episodes, we talked about the main secret of Dmitri Mendeleev, about an important element that mysteriously disappeared from his table. But there are other, no less amazing legends associated with the name of the great chemist, and it will be interesting to dig into them. Let's take a look. The famous table appeared to Mendeleev in a dream. The main legend about the dream was inadvertently started by Dmitri Ivanovich himself. Mendeleev's student and friend, the geologist Alexander Inostrantsev, recalled the story of the discoverer of the periodic law, saying that he had long struggled to generalize and present the ideas about the relationships between chemical elements as a coherent system. And then one day, exhausted by fruitless attempts, Mendeleev dozed off on the couch in his study and clearly saw in a dream a table reflecting the pattern. Inostrantsev published this story 40 years after the discovery of the table itself, and at that time the geologist Alexander was 76 years old, and the great chemist was no longer alive. Moreover, Mendeleev's contemporaries often noted that the scientist had an extraordinary sense of humor and loved to make up tall tales about himself. He was joking or greatly exaggerated the facts. The discovery was preceded by several years of preparatory work, as evidenced by numerous manuscripts and drafts. Here, for example, is the first handwritten version of Mendeleev's table from February 17, 1869. And once, when answering a question from a reporter of the Petersburg Leaf about how the periodic table was actually born, he said, "It's not like getting paid by the line, as you do. I might have thought about it for 25 years." He was held back a year at school because of very bad grades. The parents decided to send their youngest son, 7-year-old Mitya, to school together with his older brother Pavel, so that he wouldn't get spoiled staying at home alone. The future famous chemist was advanced for his age and was excellent at reading and arithmetic. Because the school only accepted children age 8 and up, the boy was admitted on the condition he spend 2 years in first grade. Later, in the middle grades, Mendeleev did not do very well, making progress only in his favorite subjects. The grade mediocre appeared often on his report card. He especially disliked Latin and religious studies. His favorite subjects were Russian literature, which was taught by Pyotr Pavlovich Yershov, the author of The Little Humpbacked Horse, as well as mathematics and physics. He was moved up because he was advanced. The scientist recalled his school years in 1906. The inventor of vodka. In 1865, Mendeleev defended his doctoral dissertation on the topic, "A Discourse on the Combination of Alcohol with Water." That's where the myth comes from that the famous chemist, if he didn't invent the alcoholic drink, at least determined its optimal strength. However, the scientist studied the properties of solutions with a high concentration, 150% by weight, while he paid almost no attention to the cherished 40 degrees, or 33.4% by weight. Vodka was consumed long before Mendeleev's scientific research, and in the 19th century, the authorities regulated its strength. Thus, the statute on the drinking tax of 1817 stated, "Wine sold from state stores must be at least as strong as Poligar." The strength of this very Poligar was 38 degrees, and by the word wine they meant grain wine, that is, vodka. In the 1860s, the amount of excise tax became directly dependent on the alcohol content, so the strength of vodka was strictly set at 40 degrees, that is, 2 degrees were added to the well-known 38 to account for evaporation. He also made some extra money by making suitcases. In fact, one of Mendeleev's hobbies was bookbinding and cardboard crafting. He did it quite skillfully, though not professionally. He made folders and boxes for his papers and manuscripts out of cardboard and leather, and he bought the materials at the Gostiny Dvor in St. Petersburg. Mendeleev himself once said that he went into one of the shops, and there the seller introduced him to another customer as a famous suitcase maker. This anecdote gave rise to the legend of Mendeleev's suitcases. He flew alone in a balloon. In the mid-1870s, Mendeleev became interested in meteorology and, as a result, started working with balloons. In 1878, at the World's Fair in Paris, he ascended in Henri Giffard's tethered balloon. In 1887, Mendeleev was invited to Klin to participate in a flight on a military balloon, to observe a solar eclipse, and to conduct meteorological research. Because of the rain, the balloon could only lift one person, and Dmitri Ivanovich flew alone, without a trained pilot. For this flight at an altitude of more than 3 kilometers, Mendeleev received a medal from the French Academy of Aerostatic Meteorology. People usually think about us, professors and scientists in general, that we talk, give advice, but don't know how to handle practical matters. That, like Shkedrin's generals, we always need a peasant to get things done. Otherwise, everything falls out of our hands, commented Mendeleev on his actions. I wanted to demonstrate that this opinion is unfair when it comes to natural scientists who spend their whole lives in laboratories, on field trips, and generally researching nature. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize 3 times, but never received it. Mendeleev was on the list of candidates in 1905, 1906, and 1907, and he was nominated for the Nobel Prize not by the Russian Academy of Sciences, but by the Swedish Academy of Sciences, of which he was also a member. But the prize was not awarded to him on the grounds that the discovery of the periodic law had been made by him a long time ago. Twice, Mendeleev was passed over in favor of other nominees. In 1907, when the decision had already been made to honor his achievements, Dmitry Ivanovich died, and the Nobel Prize is awarded only to the living. One version of why Mendeleev never received the prize is a conflict with the Nobels. Mendeleev repeatedly criticized the Nobel family for their wasteful attitude toward the resources of Russian territories. In 1880, there was a public confrontation between Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev and Ludwig Nobel, the owner of a mechanical plant in St. Petersburg and the head of the Nobel Brothers Oil Partnership, the largest producer of kerosene. In this production, gasoline and heavy residues were considered useless waste and were destroyed. And so, Mendeleev suggested turning these waste residues into oils, which are 34 times more expensive than kerosene. This dealt a blow to the Nobel oil empire, as their Russian competitors could successfully compete with them. The Russian industrialist Rogozin supported Mendeleev in the discussion with Nobel and, following the scientist's recommendations, began to fully process at the plant built on the Volga. To process oil, obtaining not only kerosene but also high-quality lubricating oils from it. He developed projects for the exploration of the Arctic. The scientist was inspired by a report on one of the polar expeditions organized by the Imperial Russian Geographical Society. In 1897, together with Vice Admiral Stepan Makarov, Mendeleev began planning an expedition along the northern sea route. The scientist served on the commission for constructing the icebreaker Yermak. The start was scheduled for the summer of 1899, but at the last moment, Mendeleev disagreed with Makarov regarding the route and the leadership of the scientific part of the expedition, and refused to participate in the project. However, this did not prevent the chemist from continuing to develop icebreaker designs and plan Arctic research, although they were not implemented. He learned the secret of smokeless powder by committing industrial espionage. The myth that Mendeleev obtained this information through deception, or uncovered the secret by analyzing material shipments to foreign factories, was created by the scientist's son, who recorded a childhood memory of his father's story in his memoirs. In reality, the chemist invented the Russian version of smokeless powder in a completely academic manner. In 1890, he traveled to Great Britain and France, met with explosive specialists there, and officially visited laboratories and factories. In France, the scientist was given 2 grams of smokeless powder for personal use, and with England, Russia had an agreement to exchange samples of such powders. After conducting research using the collected data, at the beginning of 1891, he obtained a special soluble nitrocellulose, which he called pyrocolodion, the basis for the future pyrocolodion powder. He developed the Russian tax system. In 1889, at the request of the Minister of Finance, Mendeleev worked on a new customs tariff project for chemical products. The following year, he joined the commission that developed the protectionist customs tariff of 1891. Mendeleev was so fascinated by political economy that most of his works were not about chemistry or natural science, but about the socio-economic situation of Russia. Someone even calculated that Mendeleev's works on chemistry make up no more than 10%. In the 1930s through 50s, a collection of his works was published in 25 volumes. But it was incomplete and intentionally shortened. After all, many of Mendeleev's economic, social, and political views were at odds with the ideology of that time. The censors removed extensive passages from his works, and sometimes entire sections and chapters. His last publications, Cherished Thoughts and Toward Understanding Russia, were subjected to especially ruthless censorship. While many prominent figures, such as Lev Tolstoy, spoke out against women receiving an education, Mendeleev gave lectures at the higher courses for women. In addition, contrary to the gymnasium reform adopted in 1871, he advocated for the unrestricted opportunity for graduates of lower schools to receive higher education. When, at the end of the 1890s, unrest and protests began among students due to the sharp deterioration of their financial situation and the infringement of their rights and freedoms, Dmitry Mendeleev was one of the few who supported the students. He personally delivered their petition to the Minister of Public Education, Delyanov, who had previously refused to speak with the students. After that, Mendeleev, who had devoted 33 years of service to the university, had to resign. A huge number of students gathered at his last lecture. The professor urged his students to seek the truth in the calmest way possible, and his last words were, "I most humbly ask you not to accompany my departure with applause for a variety of reasons." The chemist worked a lot on issues of Russia's economic development, studied various fields of industry, was a supporter of protectionism, and spoke out against parasitic speculative capital. Mendeleev thought it could be avoided under a system of communes, artels, and cooperatives. Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev was such a multifaceted person. Rate this episode fairly, and let us know with a like or comment if you want a big detailed film about Mendeleev. If the response is strong, we'll get to work on it. See you on our channel.